The price of preventing the war will be lower than the cost of its consequences, said the head of the Ukrainian diplomacy, Dmytro Kuleba, in Brussels on Tuesday, appealing to NATO to support Kiev in the face of escalating Russian aggression. We'll discuss the situation in eastern Ukraine with our first guest, director of the new Geopolitics Research Network, analyst and advisor in the field of security and defense, Mr. Mykhailo Samus. Hello, Mykhailo. Nice to have you on Rakrakon.
Hello.
What is your assessment of the situation on the eastern borders of Ukraine right now, and what is your take on the messing up of the Russian troops over there?
I think that military threat from Russia now is absolutely real. And after the building of military infrastructure around Ukraine since 2014, Russia created three new army. It's First Tank Army, which is close to Moscow, 20th Army with headquarters in Voronezh, and 8th Army on the south of Russian Federation, which is actually conducting control of the occupation forces in Donbass, Russian forces on Ukrainian Donbass. So military preparation is absolutely serious, but I'm absolutely agree with Mr. Kuleba of Ukrainian MFA that the consequences for Putin of these high-scale military operations against Ukraine could be very high, could be very expensive, I would say that, because I personally cannot find any motivations and any real reasons for Putin to start full-scale military operations against Ukraine, because one thing, talking about the informational campaign, talking about the military maneuvers, military movements, but other stuff, it's talking about the hundreds and thousands of killing people and the soldiers, and not only for Ukraine, but obviously for Russia. I think Russia, Putin, doesn't need these consequences and continuation of this crisis like this. I think the first reason for Putin to make these moments is actually the trying to press on the new U.S. administration, because if you know that Biden still didn't communicate with Putin, I think it makes nervous Russian president. And instead of calling to Putin, Biden called to Zelensky, Ukrainian president, I think, and called Putin a killer. So I think it's the first reason. Second reason, it's a pressure on the NATO, trying to divide NATO, because inside of the NATO, you know that exist at least two groups of countries, which one group of country like Poland, United States, UK, Canada is supporting intentions and aspirations of Ukraine to the NATO. And other group of the country like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, they don't see any threat from a military threat from Russia, and they don't want to have Ukraine inside of the NATO, because they think that it will be even higher military threat from Russia if Ukraine will be inside of the NATO. So I think it's a second reason. And third reason of military preparations and military demonstrations by Russia now, it's actually trying to press on Ukraine on Minsk agreement, on Minsk process to make Donbass like Moldovan Transnistria. I explain it means that to push occupied territory to inside of political body of Ukraine and destroy Ukraine from inside, like Russia is pretty successfully doing with Transnistria and Moldova.
What is your assessment on the words that we heard today? That, or actually, what are the expectations of Ukraine from NATO in terms of supporting of Ukraine in this crisis that is going on, in this war that is actually going on since 2014, which is a constant conflict? We had, like, I don't know, 28 Ukrainian soldiers killed only this year during this conflict. So what do you expect from NATO right now?
Obviously, it's not a direct military support or participation of NATO countries in military conflict. It's impossible, because NATO, it's not a NATO member. But of course, for Ukraine, as I told, Russia is trying to divide NATO. to destroy the solidarity inside of the NATO. And I think that the main support for Ukraine is a NATO solidarity and actually decision to provide member action plan for Ukraine in the shortest time as possible. In 2008, back to the 2008, before Georgian war, NATO didn't give Georgia to Ukraine member action plan, and exactly after this, I think bad decision, Russia started the war against Georgia in 2008. I think that Russia is waiting. What is the reaction of NATO on this military demonstration on the Ukrainian border? If NATO reacts strongly together, so in solidarity with inside of the NATO and in solidarity with Ukraine, I think it will be pretty strong signal toward Putin and Russia, and it will be the final of this military demonstration and pressure on the West.
Mykhailo, there is also another interesting aspect of the whole situation. Actually, each time Russia is trying to develop and push its forces on the border with Ukraine, we hear from United States about deployment of the American vessels on the Black Sea. We've heard those announcements right now as well. What is the meaning of these gestures in terms of the political pressure around the threats from Russia against Ukraine?
First of all, of course, it's United States demonstrated support to Ukraine, demonstrate that they keep their eyes on the situation, and they put missiles because it's a missiles vessels, missiles military ships to close vicinity of the conflict, to close the region of the conflict. But unfortunately, to be honest, because of the Montreal Convention, which is limiting participating on military ships of non-Black Sea countries. For example, United States can send to Black Sea in one time only two destroyers, not more. This is Montreal Convention limitations. So it means that Russia totally control the Black Sea, totally dominate in Black Sea, and unfortunately, Ukraine, Bulgaria, and Romania, they don't have forces, military or naval forces enough to stop Russian aggression in Black Sea. And unfortunately, only two vessels of United States Navy, it's not enough to stop Russian 6 submarines and dozens of Russian missiles, boats with caliber missiles with range more than 1,000 kilometers.
So you treat it more like a diplomatic statement backed by the
Absolutely.
military power of the American Navy. Mykhailo, you mentioned the idea, the Russian idea of creating some kind of a state which is indeed not a state. We have several examples inside the Europe or at the Europe closest neighborhoods. We got Abkhazia, we got Ossetia, we got the Transnistria, as you mentioned. What is the current status of Donbas right now? Are we already at the stage where these provinces of Ukraine are generally under the Russian supervision? And is it the state that was desired by the Russia from the very beginning of this conflict, in your opinion? Or we are not at this stage yet?
In Ukraine, we defined this territory like occupied territory by the law. So it's in Ukraine, it's absolutely clear status. It's occupied territories, as well as the same status like in Crimea. It's a legal annexed occupied territories. So it's Ukrainian territory by occupied by Russia. So according to the international law, Russia is occupant, aggressor, and Russia has effective control on these territories and issue responsibility of what happening on this territory. Of course, Russia can do what they want because they're aggressors, and they could make this a new status, proclaimed that this is independent states, or for example, they could include these territories to the constitutional territory of Russia, but it will be again annexation. So anyway, all of these steps by Russia will be against international law because it's occupied territory.
Mykhailo, thank you very much for your time and for your presence on Rak Rakon. See you next time.